Queen Camilla is sharing the secret to her and King Charles III's 20-year marriage. After tying the knot in 2005, the Queen Consort greater than behind closed palace doors. A directive has been issued that threatens to shatter everything Catherine has built. The Queen Consort has spoken, and the Princess of Wales is reeling from the blow. What happens next could change the monarchy forever. The Midnight Command. The call came through at 11:47 on a November evening. Just as Kensington Palace was settling into silence, Catherine had been reviewing correspondence in her private study when her senior aide appeared at the door. Face pale, hands trembling slightly as she clutched a sealed envelope bearing the unmistakable crest of the Queen Consort. This was not a suggestion. This was not a request for consultation. This was an order. What transpired in the minutes following that delivery would send shock waves through the inner circles of the royal family, creating fractures that threatened the very foundation of the institution. Catherine had spent over a decade serving with grace and dedication, according to sources who spoke on condition of anonymity. The directive was clear, unambiguous, and devastating in its implications. Camilla, exercising her authority as Queen Consort, had issued an instruction that directly undermined Catherine's carefully planned initiatives for the coming year. Projects that had been months in development, causes that Catherine had championed with passion and purpose, were to be reassessed, restructured, or in some cases, shelved entirely. The timing could not have been more calculated. With King Charles increasingly delegating responsibilities to Camilla while focusing on his own health concerns, the Queen Consort has been steadily consolidating her influence within the palace structure. But this move represented something far more aggressive than administrative reorganization. This was personal. Catherine read the document 3 times, her expression moving from disbelief to comprehension to something those present described as quiet. Devastation for someone who has faced public scrutiny, media storms, and personal challenges with remarkable composure. This blow struck at the very core of her identity within the royal framework. The Princess of Wales has spent years building her reputation as a moralizer, as someone who could bridge the gap between tradition and contemporary relevance. Her work on early childhood development, mental health advocacy, and community engagement has earned international respect and genuine public affection. To have these efforts suddenly subject to Camilla's oversight represented not just a professional setback, but a fundamental questioning of Catherine's judgment and value that as dawn broke over London. The palace machinery was already moving to contain the situation, but containment becomes impossible when the damage is this profound. When the message sent is this clear, the Queen Consort had drawn a line, and Catherine found herself on the wrong side of it. Catherine's silent struggle. The days following that November directive revealed a side of Catherine that the public rarely witnesses. Those within her immediate circle describe a woman grappling not just with professional disappointment, but with a deeper sense of betrayal that cuts to the heart of what she believed her role to be. Catherine has always understood that royal life requires sacrifice. She has navigated the complexities of marrying into the most scrutinized family in the world with remarkable grace. She has raised 3 children under constant media observation. She has transformed herself from a middle-class girl from Berkshire into a future Queen Consort, learning protocols, mastering public speaking, and developing a work ethic that has earned grudging respect even from her harshest critics. But this felt different. The initiatives that Camilla's order targeted were not vanity projects or casual interests. These were programs that Catherine had developed through extensive research, consultation with experts, and a genuine passion for making a difference. Her early years' foundation had been building momentum, creating real change in how society approaches child development and parental support. Her work on mental health had helped reduce stigma and encourage thousands to seek help. To have these efforts suddenly subordinated to Camilla's approval process was not merely bureaucratic restructuring. It was a statement about hierarchy, about whose vision for the monarchy would prevail, about who held real power behind the ceremonial facades. Sources close to Catherine revealed that she spent hours in private meetings with her senior advisors trying to understand how the situation had deteriorated to this point. There had been tensions before. Certainly, Camilla and Catherine represent different generations, different approaches to royal duty, different philosophies about how the institution should evolve. But there had also been a mutual understanding, a professional courtesy that kept conflicts contained and manageable. That understanding had now evaporated. What makes Catherine's position particularly difficult is the lack of obvious recourse. In any other professional setting, there would be channels for appeal, mechanisms for resolution, and clear hierarchies for arbitration. But within the royal family, power dynamics are fluid, influenced by personal relationships, historical precedent, and the unpredictable currents of public opinion. Prince William, torn between supporting his wife and maintaining family unity, found himself in an impossible position. His relationship with his father has been carefully rebuilt after years of strain, but his loyalty to Catherine is absolute. The prospect of choosing between his wife and his family responsibilities represents exactly the kind of internal conflict that has plagued the Windsor dynasty for generations. Catherine's response to the crisis has been characteristically measured, at least in public. She has continued her scheduled engagements, smiled for cameras, and delivered speeches with her usual polish and warmth. But those who know her well can detect the subtle signs of strain. The pauses before answering certain questions, the slightly tighter grip on her handbag during tense moments, the way her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes when discussing future plans. In private, the devastation runs deeper. Friends describes a woman who feels her life's work as being undermined, who questions whether the sacrifices she has made were worth it, and who wonders if the institution she has served so loyally values her contributions at all. The emotional toll has been compounded by the isolation inherent in her position. There are precious few people to whom she can truly confide, even fewer who understand the unique pressures of royal life. Her mother, Kate Middleton, has been a source of support. But even family must maintain an appropriate distance from palace politics. Catherine has always drawn strength from her sense of purpose, from the belief that her platform could be used to make genuine positive change in people's lives. That sense of purpose has now been called into question, leaving her adrift in ways that cut deeper than any media criticism or public controversy ever could. The sleepless nights have accumulated. Friends report seeing a Catherine they barely recognize, someone whose usual vitality has been dimmed by the weight of this crisis. She has lost weight, though palace officials deny any health concerns. The truth is more complex and more troubling. This is not physical illness, but spiritual exhaustion. The wearing down of someone who has given everything only to see it potentially stripped away. Her daily routine continues with military precision because it must. Morning briefings with her private secretary, wardrobe consultations for upcoming engagements, review of speeches and talking points, coordination with charities and patronages. The mechanics of being the Princess of Wales continue regardless of the turmoil beneath the surface. But those closest to her see the cost. They see how she retreats into herself during quiet moments, how her mind drifts during conversations, how she sometimes stares out windows as if searching for answers that refuse to materialize. This is not the confident, poised woman the public knows. This is someone fundamentally shaken by forces she cannot control. Palace walls have ears. The royal household has always been a hotbed of gossip, rivalry, and political maneuvering. But the atmosphere in recent weeks has become particularly charged. Staff members find themselves navigating an increasingly treacherous landscape, where loyalties are tested and every conversation might be reported back to one faction or another. The division is not absolute, but it is real and growing more pronounced by the day. There are those who align with Camilla, who see her as a stabilizing force with decades of experience, navigating royal protocols and media relations. They argue that her intervention in Catherine's projects was necessary oversight, a natural exercise of her authority as queen consort, and a reasonable response to concerns about coordination and resource allocation. Then there are those who stand firmly with Catherine, who view Camilla's directive as overreach, jealousy, or a calculated attempt to diminish the Princess of Wales before she becomes too influential, too popular. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in the complex middle ground. What cannot be disputed is that Camilla's journey to becoming queen consort was long, difficult, and marked by sustained public hostility. For years, she was vilified as the woman who destroyed Diana's marriage, cast as the villain in one of the most famous love triangles in modern history. Her rehabilitation has been gradual. These attitudes have softened with time, but they have not disappeared entirely. Every poll, every public appearance, every comment section on royal news articles reveals the persistence of this antipathy. Catherine, by contrast, has enjoyed a remarkably positive public reception throughout her time in the royal family. She has been compared favorably to Diana, praised for her style, her dedication to her children, her work ethic, and her apparent normality. She represents a bridge between the royal family and ordinary people, someone who came from outside the aristocratic bubble and maintained connections to the ethnic world, even as she ascended to the heights of privilege. This public affection represents both an asset and a threat. An asset because it strengthens the monarchy's connection to contemporary Britain. A threat because it potentially overshadows other members of the family, creating hierarchies of popularity that complicate institutional functioning. Some royal observers suggest that Camilla's directive was motivated less by genuine concerns about Catherine's projects and more by anxiety about being eclipsed. As King Charles's health concerns continue and his public appearances become less frequent, Camilla has found herself in an increasingly visible role. But visibility without genuine popularity creates a precarious position. If the public perceives Camilla as undermining the beloved Catherine, the backlash could be severe and immediate. Social media has amplified these dynamics, creating echo chambers where opinions become entrenched and narratives harden into unshakable beliefs. The palace's challenge is managing these competing interests, while maintaining the facade of family unity that the institution requires. Behind the scenes, frantic negotiations are taking place. Compromises are being explored, and damage control strategies are being developed with military precision. But compromises require both parties to be willing to concede ground. And right now, that willingness appears to be in short supply on both sides. The media, sensing blood in the water, has begun publishing increasingly detailed accounts of palace tensions. Some stories are accurate, others wildly speculative, but all contribute to a narrative of institutional crisis that the monarchy can ill afford. During a period of transition and uncertainty, royal correspondents who have covered the family for decades speak of an atmosphere reminiscent of the worst days of the Charles and Diana conflict, when private pain became public spectacle and the survival of the monarchy seemed uncertain. Those comparisons are not made lightly. They reflect genuine concern about whether the institution can withstand another period of highly publicized internal conflict. Catherine's team has maintained strict message discipline, refusing to comment on rumors or engage in public disputes. This approach has served her well in the past, allowing her to rise above controversies and maintain her dignity. But silence can only hold so long when the pressure continues to build, and journalists continue to dig for confirmation of what palace insiders are whispering. The situation has created unexpected alliances and revealed fault lines that previously remained hidden beneath the surface of royal civility. Some senior staff who once worked closely with both women now find themselves forced to choose sides, knowing that remaining neutral may no longer be an option as the conflict intensifies. Junior staff members watch these dynamics with anxiety. Aware that their own career prospects may depend on backing the right faction, the palace has always operated on systems of patronage and favor. But those systems function best when conflicts remain abstract or distant. When tensions become this immediate and personal, the entire household feels the strain. Meetings that should focus on logistics and planning increasingly devolve into discussions about managing internal politics. Energy that should be devoted to royal duties gets consumed by navigating interpersonal conflicts. The institution's effectiveness suffers, even as its public face remains carefully composed. Some long-serving palace staff privately express concern that the monarchy is repeating mistakes from previous generations, allowing personal conflicts to undermine institutional stability. They remember the chaos of the 1990s, the damage done when royal disputes became public entertainment. They fear a return to those dark days, when the very future of the monarchy seemed genuinely uncertain. The Queen Consort's hidden agenda. To understand Camilla's motivations requires examining not just the immediate context of her directive, but the broader arc of her relationship with the institution she now helps lead. Her path to this position was anything but straightforward, marked by scandal, exile, and a patient campaign for rehabilitation that spanned decades. Camilla Parker B.S. was never supposed to be queen. When she first became involved with Charles in the early 1970s, the relationship was considered entirely unsuitable for a future king. She was not from the right background, not the right age, and most damningly, not considered appropriate by the standards that still governed royal marriages at that time. Charles married Diana Spencer instead, and the disaster that followed is well documented in history. But throughout that marriage, and long after its spectacular collapse, Camilla remained in Charles's life as his confidant, his support, and ultimately his wife. Her official acceptance by the royal family came gradually and deliberately, first as Charles's companion, then as his partner, eventually as his wife, and finally, following Queen Elizabeth's death in September of 2022, as Queen Consort. Each step represented a calculated decision by the institution to prioritize Charles's happiness and stability over public opinion and traditional expectations. But acceptance does not equal security. Camilla understands better than most how quickly favor can be withdrawn, how fragile her position remains despite the titles and the protocol that now surround her. She has lived through public hatred that would have destroyed most people. She has endured decades of negative press, cruel commentary, and comparison to a woman who became a secular saint in death. This insecurity, some argue, drives her current actions toward Catherine. By asserting authority over Catherine's projects, she is not merely exercising legitimate oversight. She is establishing dominance, making clear that despite Catherine's popularity and despite her position as future queen consort, the current power structure runs through Camilla and will continue to do so for as long as she occupies her role. There is also the matter of legacy and how history will remember her. Camilla is 77 years old, keenly aware that her time in this role is limited by age and circumstance. What will she be remembered for? Will she be known only as the other woman who became queen? Or can she establish an independent identity, a body of work that transcends her controversial past? Catherine's rising profile potentially threatens that legacy project. Every article praising Catherine's initiatives, every poll showing her popularity, every public appearance where she outshines other royals represents a reminder that Camilla's acceptance is conditional and her influence temporary rather than transformative. Some royal insiders suggest that Camilla's directive was specifically designed to bring certain of Catherine's mental health initiatives under her own umbrella, allowing her to claim credit for their success while constraining Catherine's independent influence. If true, this represents not just bureaucratic reorganization, but calculated appropriation of another person's work and vision. Catherine's supporters are particularly outraged by this possibility. They argue that the Princess of Wales has put in the real work over the years, conducting the research, facilitating the consultation, and managing the painstaking development of programs that actually help people in meaningful ways. To have that work co-opted by someone seeking to burnish their own reputation strikes them as fundamentally unjust and deeply cynical. But justice and royal politics rarely align in any straightforward manner. The institution operates on different principles, where power matters more than fairness, and perception often trumps reality when decisions are made about roles and responsibilities. Camilla's defenders counter that she brings decades of experience, institutional knowledge, and relationships that Catherine simply does not possess yet. They argue that her oversight will strengthen, rather than weaken these initiatives, providing resources and access that Catherine could not secure on her own at this stage of her royal career. The challenge is that this argument assumes good faith on all sides, a genuine commitment to collaboration rather than competition, based on recent events and the devastation they have caused. That assumption seems increasingly difficult to sustain or believe. There are those within palace circles who whisper about deeper motivations, about Camilla's concern that Catherine represents not just a professional rival, but an existential threat to her legacy. If Catherine continues to build popularity and influence, the narrative of Camilla's reign as queen consort risks being overshadowed entirely. History might remember this period not for what Camilla accomplished, but for what Catherine built, despite obstacles placed in her path. This fear of irrelevance may be driving decisions that appear petty or vindictive on the surface, but reflect deeper anxieties about mortality and meaning. Camilla has spent decades fighting for acceptance, for a place in history that extends beyond being the woman who destroyed a fairy tale marriage.